Welcome to U-Wrench. Now if you're in the middle of trying to remove an old caliper, or more importantly the flexible brake line that connects up to the fixed brake line here, and you're having problems, you just can't get this removed, we might have the solution for you. So the problem that you're likely having is you've come to try and undo the brake hose fixing here, and you're trying to undo this, and what it's actually doing is actually trying to twist the entire hard line with the fixing. Now it should be the case that this brake line passes through the centre of this fixing, so that fixing should be free to turn. When you get a bit of corrosion in there, sometimes it gets bound up, and when you're trying to undo it, it's twisting the whole thing. Now the key to this is trying to get as much movement out of this as you can. It's going to use penetration spray and not just keep trying to undo it, but also working it backwards as well. So you're working it in both directions constantly, just try and get as much movement as you can in the top half. I'm going to show you in a minute how to try and loosen this off. Now you might get to a point where you've managed to loosen it off and you've got some good movement in it and you've undone it a couple of turns, but you just can't do it any further. Well, that's okay, because at that stage we can then look at actually disconnecting it from the bottom. That's precisely the process that we're going to have a look at in this video. Now when it comes to these brake lines, obviously if your brake line is completely corroded and falling apart, then no matter what you do, you're not going to get this fixing to start turning around it again. So you're going to be having to look at replacing this hard line. However, if yours is in fairly decent shape, as this one is, so you know there's probably only a little bit of corrosion in there, but you cannot get that thing to move, but it should, because it looks pretty good. In that case, that's where we can start looking at trying to ease this off. And not only that, but then of course we do have to refit it. We're going to refit it using exactly the same method as we used to get it apart. So we're going to show you the full thing. So what do you say? Let's take a look. So next we're going to be looking at undoing our brake fixing here at the back. And there's a tool that makes this job a lot easier, and that is this. This is a set of flare nut wrenches. And a set of these are really cheap, not this particular brand. We can pick up a cheap set of these on Amazon for about $13 or $14 for the entire set. And this really does make the job a lot easier. So again, we'll have links to those. Be sure to check that out. And the reason these are so useful is they've got this little slot in them, so you can actually slot that around the brake line and down onto the fitting like that. You can do it with a standard spanner, but it does tend to be a little bit more awkward. Like I said, these are so cheap and it does make the job so much easier. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try and undo this. What we don't want to do is start it moving and then just keep twisting it, because what can happen is if this nut here, this fixing, should actually be able to spin freely around the hose that passes through the centre of it. However, what can happen over time, again, you get a little bit of corrosion in there and the two actually lock together. And so when you start undoing this, what you'll find is it's possible, if it sticks, that this whole pipe will also be wanting to turn. If it does, you don't want to just carry on, because then you can twist this pipe and end up snapping it off. Now once we disconnect that brake line, we know we're going to be losing brake fluid. So it's a good idea at this stage to check the fluid level that we have here in the reservoir. If you can't see it very clearly, if you get a flashlight and shine it around the edges, you can usually kind of get a feel for where the level is. Give it a little bit of a wobble, you should see that level kind of shake as you wobble it. And I can see on mine, we're just a hair over the maximum at the moment, so ours is perfect as it is. However, of course, if you did need to fill it up, it's a good idea to put some blue paper underneath just to catch any drips. And of course you're going to need a funnel, and ours is particularly clean. I've already cleaned it. If yours is dirty, as it says, warning, clean filler cap before removing. Make sure you give that a good clean. And once yours is clean, you can just go ahead, remove the cap, and then put your make sure you're using a nice clean funnel. And then obviously you can put a little bit of brake fluid in there just to top it up. Make sure you're on that max line there before we start. Once we get this removed, it's a good idea, if you're able to actually cap this off to stop the drip whilst you're getting the next thing ready to reconnect. One thing that I've found is quite good for this is just a little tyre valve, just a standard one from a car tyre, and this tends to be a perfect fit, so I push this onto the end and that will stop that drip, gives me a few moments whilst I'm working getting the other caliper ready. Now, it doesn't really matter, you're not going to lose all that much fluid. The new caliper's ready to fit anyway, so it's not the end of the world. We're definitely going to lose a little bit, but if you are able to cap it off, obviously that is preferable. And also, before we undo this, make sure you've got a drip tray underneath. As I said, we are going to lose some drips, and make sure that's not going straight onto the floor. Just give me a little bit more space. I'm just going to pop this out, this wheel speed sensor cable. Pop that out to one side. Just got to remember to pop that back in at the end. So I'm going to start undoing this now. Remember, the thing to keep an eye on is whether this fitting at the end is going to spin freely around the pipe or whether it starts to twist the whole pipe. That's the key to undoing this. Got to make sure you're prepared for that. Okay, so the first bit of movement. That was on pretty tight, so we'll see. Okay. So now I want to see if it appears to be moving freely around the pipe or not. It's not too bad. It's sticking a little bit, so I'm going to put a bit more penetration fluid on there. Now I've cracked that open. Yeah, and unfortunately, it looks like you can see it's twisting that whole pipe. I'll move that backwards and forwards. Yeah. What I don't want to do is I don't want to force that because I'm going to start twisting this pipe. Yeah. Sometimes you can get away with it if you wiggle it backwards and forwards a little bit. There is definitely some movement in there. Now I've managed to free this up a little bit. As you can see, we've got some pretty decent movement in there now, and that's without twisting the pipe. However, on these brake lines, you can see we have these kind of coiled sections right here. It actually finishes just here, and that last bit that's exposed just a little bit is actually the flat pipe. So it's not like this, it doesn't have this kind of spring around it almost. This section down here going through the fitting is just a plain pipe. And what can happen, and it's happened here, is you'll kind of be able to rewind it, and this will come up and up and up and up and up. Then it will hit the bottom of this coil, and then you'll find that you won't, even though you've got movement in the fitting, as soon as you hit the bottom of it, that's it. It won't move any further, no matter what you do. It's a little bit annoying. That's why I don't really like these ones that have this this coil kind of spring bit on them. It does make it a little bit more awkward. However, we definitely have movement in this, and I've managed to do several turns on it, so it is spinning freely, but I can't undo it enough to get it completely removed. And this does happen fairly often on these vehicles, like I said, with this spring coil. It's not the end of the world, so what we're going to have to do is, rather than unscrew this fixing from the top, we're actually going to unscrew the hose from the bottom. So the plan is, we've got a clip here that holds this hose in place. You can just see it there. We need to get that removed first of all. That will allow this whole fitting to move through the bracket that we have here. So then what we'll do is we'll cut the caliper down, and so we have the hose free, the hose will be pointing downwards. Then we can rotate the whole caliper, which is obviously going to rotate the hose at the same time. Then we can unscrew the hose from the fitting rather than unscrewing the fitting from our hose. So first of all, let's get this clip removed here. I'm going to get a large flathead screwdriver. I'm going to lever between the bottom of this circular section right down in here. That's actually the top of our hose, and this little arm here. And the way that this works, it has two arms that pass through on either side of our fitting. So you kind of got to move it from one side, then the other to pull the whole thing forward. So with that clip out of the way, this should be free. As you can see, again, we've got a little bit of corrosion holding this in place. This little bracket here has a hole in it, and that's what this is passing through. But as you can see, we're not loose yet. I'm just looking to remove as much of the corrosion as I can from around the base of the circle, which is the end of the flexible brake hose. Now we're going to grab our rubber mallet and tap on the rubber hose. This section of the hose right here, you can see it ends just here. This is actually metal, so we can tap on this bit. This is not pure rubber, don't have to worry too much about it. That section there is what you want to be tapping. All we're looking to do is break this seal that's corroded up in the centre of the bracket. There it goes. So now we can see that it's free. We can actually move it slightly up and down as required. So now I'm going to cut the cable tie down, drop the caliper down in this direction, And it's easier if you have a second person to be able to rotate the caliper, because you may still need to counter hold this. You don't want to put too much pressure on this fixing up at the top here. Feels a little bit sticky, needs a bit of convincing to get started. It does actually have a hex section just here on the top of the pipe. So if you push it down through the bracket a little bit, you should be able to hold here and get it started here at the same time. So as you can see, it's dripping here. Push it out just for the moment. Put my little cap on. There we go. So next, if you take a look at the bracket, in particular the hole that passes through the centre here. If you look carefully, you'll notice that it's a hex shape, but on one of those hex points, it's actually rounded rather than pointed. If you take a look on your brake line, you'll see that you have exactly that same shape. It is a hexagon, but with one curve instead of a point on one side. And the reason for that is when you put this hose up through this hole, having that means it can only go in one orientation. That's going to be the correct orientation to stop you twisting the pipe too much when you come to fit the caliper back on. And so it's important that we get that lined up correctly. Now, because we have some corrosion in here, I'm just going to grab my hook tool and just clean away a little bit at these inner edges. It was a little bit corroded getting it out, so I want to make sure that the new one goes in nice and smoothly. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes just giving this a bit of a clean up. Now, a quick tip for you to make this easier. We've had a look at where the curved section is on the bracket, and that's to the inner corner nearest the pipe. However, as we're rotating this, it's actually very difficult, especially when you've got brake fluid and stuff dripping down, to actually see where this centre is. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mark this outer ring here just with a file, just so we've got a very clear mark of where the middle of this curved section is right here. Now we've got a little visible notch just where the approximate centre of that is. And now you shouldn't have to do this, but because we're having to do the workaround because our upper hose fixing wouldn't fully undo, we're going to offer this back up. So it's very important that we know where this is, otherwise we could be juggling with that caliper for days. So remembering we had this little problem that we couldn't fully undo this fixing from the bottom. So what we're doing here is a slight workaround. However, because we have limited movement on this, what we're going to do is exactly the same as we did to remove ours. So we're going to screw the cable by rotating our caliper to get this as close as we can, obviously through the middle of this hole. And then once we've got as far as we can, that final twist, we'll make sure that we get it aligned properly, lock it in place, and then we should have enough movement in this to get those last couple of turns just to snug it up properly. So again, we're going to be using two people, one person just rotating the caliper as we get this done up. Don't forget to put it through the hole before you start. And one very important thing to remember is don't leave that caliper hanging from that brake line at any stage. Those brake lines are relatively delicate, especially compared to the caliper, so don't just hang the weight of that caliper. If you need to hang it up, get a cable tie and do that. I've got that about as far as I can by hand, so now I need to start snugging it up. So at the moment I'm going to use this on the bottom of the hose here and just do it that way. Remember to counter hold at the top, so I'm going to do it above and below the bracket again. Okay, so I've now got this to a point where it's nice and snugged up. And currently I've got my little notch here, showing me that the centre of my circle on my hose is here. And I know it's on this back corner is the rounded side on the bracket. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to undo the bottom hose enough so that I can get it aligned through the hole and push it through. Because then I know that's probably like half a turn to get that back into place. And I know I've got more than half a turn available on our top fixing. Got that in the approximate position. Yeah, there it is. Slot it back in. So now I need to put that clip back in before I tighten this up. clip all the way back in. So now I can go ahead and tighten this up. It's a good idea at this stage just to grab yourself a bit of blue paper, and you want to give this a really good dry off, especially on the thread here. The reason being is that we're going to test this later on to check that it's holding pressure correctly and nothing is leaking. And what we don't want to do is mistake any old bits of fluid or even penetration spray for being brake fluid, so make sure you give that a really good clean off. So there we have it. That's the full process that we used for this somewhat tricky caliper installation. And as you can see, it is a little bit complicated, it does take a little bit of time, but the bottom line is, as long as you can get some movement on the top here, then it can still be done. So we hope this video has been helpful for you. If it has, please be sure to hit that like button for us. Whilst you're there, also consider hitting subscribe. We've got hundreds more videos on our YouTube channel waiting for you to take a look at. We appreciate it. We'll see you on the next video.